Hello there. Welcome in. Glad to have you. Hope you enjoyed your Labor Day weekend. But now it's back to business. And of course, the business of college football in full swing. And soon, very soon, a little more than 48 hours from now, the NFL season will kick off, and you'll be able to hear Chiefs, Ravens, and every primetime game, courtesy of our friends at Westwood One right here on Extra Sports 1300. 719-247-1313 is the number if you want to interact with the show. I will say there's a veritable cornucopia of sports topics today, but it is heavily leaned towards college football because we got a lot of college football over the weekend, a lot of consequence, I think, out of week one for a lot of teams. And that's actually where I would like to start, because I think if you take all three of the big Colorado football teams, right? CU, CSU, Air Force. I think that the feeling is it's got to be better than this moving forward. Maybe CSU is the most extreme example of that, but I think you look at both Air Force and CU in week one and say it's got to be better moving forward. Whatever your ceiling is for these three teams, I don't think any of them were even close to that, or more accurately, playing at a level that makes you think they're going to reach their ceiling. Now, you may still have confidence, and that's what I want to know from you at 719-247-1313. Of those three teams after week one, who do you feel best about? And look, week one may not affect you, especially if you're a Rams fan. Maybe you conditioned yourself properly going into that game against Texas, but I'll talk about CSU in a little bit. I think that's going to be hard to unsee what happened to them down in Austin. You know that CU has to be better. I know North Dakota State is not your typical week one game, but it was the same. Can't run the ball, can't stop anybody. Shador, save us, you're our only hope. That can't happen. It can't happen this week. Got to be better. Got to be able to do more than they did a year prior if they expect the results to be wholly different than they were last year. And as far as Air Force goes, if I had to describe what Air Force looked like on Saturday, I would say they looked like one of the most inexperienced teams at the Division I level, which they are. When you look at this team and the number of snaps that they have taken at the Division I college level, it's not many. It's not many. This is an inexperienced team. You may look at the roster and see junior, senior. Their experience doesn't match up with that. Earlier this afternoon, I was up at Air Force for their weekly press conference, and one of the offensive linemen met with us. He's a senior. He played in 2 games last year. This is an inexperienced football team. And that has to be kept in mind when you're evaluating them. But they looked like an inexperienced team. Even Troy Calhoun, right after the game, said it on CBS Sports Network. It's a long way to go. And I think that's the perfect assessment. Defensively, you're good. Right? I know there's probably some things. We talked to Trey Williams this afternoon. Look, there are things that they want to work on, but you look at that defense, and that's where you have to go and say, if you have confidence that the Falcons are going to be able to win a lot of games, especially early on, you got to look at that defense, especially the secondary. Because if not for Merrimack calling that late timeout and drawing up a play to get in the end, they would have been shut out. We saw more of Camby Goff and Peyton Zadroik than we expected to, and they were both fantastic. If Air Force is going to do a fair amount of winning this year, until I see the offense come along and get to a point where they need to be, you got to put it on the defense. The defense has got to carry Air Force for a little while, because that offense looked out of sync and they were not nearly as productive as you would expect an Air Force offense to be. To that end, they threw the ball 14 times against Merrimack. That was more than any win they had last year, more pass attempts, which tells you when they win what they do, right? When Air Force wins, it's not them throwing the football. And there are only 2 losses last year where they threw the ball less in many of their losses last year. It was only Army, which got out of control. So all bets are off in terms of what Air Force wants to do offensively, the way that game was going. And then Boise. That was it. Those were the only 2 games where Air Force threw the ball more than the 14 times John Boucher threw it on Saturday, and they were playing Merrimack. There's a game they played against Wyoming. That was an absolute shootout on the scoreboard. I think it was like 34-27 last year. And they didn't throw the ball nearly as much as they did yesterday, or did on Saturday. Now, John Boucher has that in his bag. He can throw the football. I would go so far as to say better than his predecessor, and probably better than a lot of guys who have come before him. He has that ability. But he completed 6 of those 14 passes. That's not enough. Gotta be more accurate with the football. They looked out of sync offensively. And that's probably where most of their inexperience lies, is on the offensive side. Again, it's striking to watch Air Force in a game like that, a season opener. And, for Air Force, the season openers, just look at last year. What was it, 42-7 or something? You expect that. So it is quite shocking to see. Not that at any point I thought Merrimack would beat Air Force, but just for the game to still be somewhat in question as late as it was. But I think a lot of Air Force offensively being out of sync can be attributed to their lack of experience. I don't think it's a lack of talent necessarily. And once they get more in sync, and that's exactly what John Boucher said. They're off on the chemistry was the direct quote. They just haven't worked together. I do expect that to be better. We'll see once they figure some of these things out whether the talent is there for Air Force to make some noise in the Mount West, to win a bowl game, all of that kind of stuff. But for now, it's just get on the same page, because it didn't look like that. You did not have the offensive line bullying Merrimack like you expect. And you expect that in nearly every game. 3 yards a carry is what Air Force had on Saturday. Only the Navy game did they average fewer yards per carry last year than that. And again, Merrimack. I think Dylan Carson getting hurt and leaving that game was a huge factor in that. We know that this team starts with running up the middle with the fullbacks and not having your best one, your most experienced one for much of that game, I think definitely impacted what Air Force was able to do from a production standpoint, but also from a play calling standpoint. I think that game is the epitome of, the Bill Belichick, we're on to Cincinnati. Like, just, you want to move to San Jose State as quickly as possible, because it wasn't where you wanted it to be. And part of moving on to San Jose State, part of the eagerness to get to week 2 is just to see. Right? It's not just that maybe Merrimack left something to be desired. You wonder how much better it will look against San Jose State. I think it will look better. I think if Dylan Carson is healthy, that will help. I very much appreciate the candor that I heard both after the game from Air Force players today. Like, they know. They're not patting themselves on the back for that performance. But you also don't want Air Force to be too down on itself, because you understand the circumstances that they are in. Defensively, it's where it needs to be. Maybe some tweaks here and there when you get to a Baylor or a Wyoming. But it's hard to argue with what the defense did. And Peyton Zadroik was an absolute monster. But offensively, it will take time. And it's typical. I talked about this with Jim Arthur last week. Like, defenses are usually ahead of the offense. When I went out to, I'm not out at practice every day, but when I went out to a practice they had at the stadium, I saw an Air Force defense that was at times overwhelming the Air Force offense. And you wonder at the time, as I did, okay, did I just catch a specific day? Could this just have been a bad day for the offense, really good day for the defense? You don't know. And then I saw them out on Saturday, and I'm like, oh, the defense is ahead. Like, that was indicative of what the Air Force coaches probably saw for most of the lead up to this season. So getting to San Jose State and just, if nothing else, just seeing operationally if it looks better, because it didn't. It looked like a group that just had not played together. And through the grace of their outstanding defense, they were able to control that game. As far as that question, how much better will it look? How much better will Air Force be for having that one game under their belt as they all of a sudden open conference play this Saturday against San Jose State? Here's Troy Calhoun on that.
I mean, you're telling me to say all of a sudden it's abracadabra. I don't think there's magic.
There may not be magic. But I'll say that if Air Force offensively looks the way they did against Merrimack, against San Jose State, they may not win that game. It's got to be better. Does it have to be leaps and bounds better? Does it have to be abracadabra? No. San Jose State isn't necessarily the worst opponent to go up against, to be fair. New coach, new system, all of that kind of stuff. It's not a bad first conference opponent. And I don't think Air Force has to be at peak form to beat San Jose State. But it's got to be better than it was against Merrimack. Or else they're going to be asking Peyton Zadroit, Camby Goff, and company to save them as they continue to figure things out. Now, bigger picture, San Jose State probably only needs to be incrementally better in order to win that football game. You got Baylor and Wyoming coming up after that. So maybe this week it doesn't have to be leaps and bounds better, but they're going to have to be quite a bit better from what they were on Saturday if they're going to have a chance to win in a building that feels like they haven't won in forever in Laramie, and taking on it. And I don't care what's going on with the Baylor program right now. Still a power conference team. But get to that when we get there. It's about getting a little bit better against San Jose State and just getting on the same page. 719-247-1313. Take your take on Air Force's opener against Merrimack. But I'll ask the bigger question. After week one, which of the three, CSU, CU, and Air Force, do you feel best about, and which one do you feel the worst about? Just getting going on a Tuesday edition. Feels like a Monday, but it's a Tuesday edition of Drive Time Sports. Coming up next, as much as maybe Air Force, CU left something to be desired for their week one performance, at least we're not 2 weeks in Tallahassee. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300.
HIMS.
It's Marvel Superhero Night with Switchbacks FC this Saturday night at Widener Field. Come dressed as your favorite character at 6 for your chance to get a limited edition superhero cape provided by Children's Hospital. And you will also, while you're there, get to meet your favorite Marvel heroes. Then stick around after the Switchbacks take on Tampa Bay for a marvelous superhero fireworks show. It all goes down Saturday, September 7th, 6 p.m. at Widener Field. Get your tickets now at switchbacksfc.com. I have been told in the past that even when I'm trying to be sincere, it comes off as sarcastic. So I will preface everything that I'm trying to be very serious about and very earnest about with, I'm being earnest about this. I legitimately feel for FSU fans. Legitimately. Because you go from how many months ago were you on top of the college football world, humming along with Jordan Travis and company? And everything from the time he has gone down has been absolute crap. Just terrible. Right? You get left out of the college football playoff. You get the brakes beat off you by Georgia. And now you're sitting here as one of the only 0-2 teams in college football. You have dropped completely out of the top 25. It's bad. And watching last night, it was borderline unwatchable. What I saw last night from Florida State. DJU. We do this with quarterbacks, both at the collegiate and the pro level. We don't listen to people that we should be listening to. Okay? Say what you will about Dabo Swinney. Okay? The way he builds his roster and whether that's a way that he can win in today's day and age of college football. The dude can coach. Okay? He can. All right? And he told you that despite him recruiting, that was a mistake to some degree that he made. He thought that it would go from Trevor Lawrence to DJU and the Clemson dynasty would continue. It didn't. But if Dabo Swinney can't get that guy to work, there are a lot of places where it's not going to work. And yet here he is popping up at FSU. And through 2 games has looked awful. The throw he made on 4th down that got picked by Boston College, that was a horrendous decision with the football. But we do this. It's the Arrested Development meme with Tobias and Lindsay when they're talking about their open marriage. Tobias says there are people that try an open marriage, and Lindsay's like, does that work? And he's like, hardly ever. People dilute themselves into thinking that it will work for them, and it never does. And then he pauses and says, but it may work for us. The guy that FSU fans have seen through 2 games is the exact same guy that Beaver fans saw in Corvallis and Clemson fans saw in Clemson. But I think where it is okay, it didn't work out at Clemson, and it was painted as DJ's decision. I actually have the quote that he had. He talked about the system. He said, I didn't want to do what I was doing at Clemson. I didn't really like what we did there scheme-wise. I didn't think we did very much. And that was coming off of a season where he completed 62% of his passes, 2,500 yards, 22 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He spends 1 year in Corvallis. He throws for 100 more yards. Meanwhile, completing 5% fewer of his passes, through 1 fewer touchdown, same amount of interceptions. So he said it was the system, yet at Oregon State, it didn't look any better. It was the same. So now he ends up at FSU, and the thought is, well, this is not Oregon State. This is Mike Norvell. This is Tallahassee. We got weapons. We're better than Oregon State. Okay. But is Keon Coleman on this football team anymore? No, he is not. And through 2 games, DJU looks like he did at Oregon, like he did at Clemson. And it's not better. It's worse. It's one thing, this expanded college football playoff. Like, as bad as you might feel if you're an LSU fan today, or, even a Clemson fan, or some of the Texas A&M. I think they also dropped out of the top 25, but they were only 20th? But some of these other teams, the expanded college football playoff, if you're in the right conference, even if you're not, even in the ACC, and this was the talk around FSU going into this week, like, as bad as the game in Dublin was, it's like, it's okay. You still win the ACC. You still get in. So this expanded college football playoff has created this second chance feel where at losing one game, especially if you weren't in the SEC, there was this big time feeling of dread, like, well, that's it. But now you go up against Boston College and you get absolutely handled. You get absolutely handled by Boston College. Bill O'Brien just showed up there. And they dominated the Seminoles. Now with 2 losses, and the fact that you lose to Boston College, I don't think you have that feeling if you're a Seminoles fan anymore of, okay, that's bad, but take a deep breath. Our path is still there. Who had Boston College as an ACC title contender? And that's who you get dominated by. And by the way, the losses for FSU didn't just come on the offensive side. They were on the defensive side. And I was told that FSU's defensive line was one of the best in the country. And I'm like, well, they lost Fisk and Verse. Are you sure about that? And I was told yes. And for 2 games, they've been absolutely dominated on the line of scrimmage. So it is Florida State coming back to take their rightful place in the college football playoff. Oh, it has been thrown way off track. And you lose to Georgia Tech and Boston College, and they weren't even considered two of the better teams in the ACC. Mike Norvell is going to have to work some magic with DJU because Jonathan Smith couldn't do it, and Jonathan Smith is a good coach. He's rebuilding the Michigan State program now. It's not like he was playing in the Sun Belt. He was in the Pac-12, being coached by high-level coaches with talent. And it looked the same as it did when his last year at Clemson. There is no one. Do not get in here, Florida fans. Do not get in here, LSU fans or Clemson fans. No one right now in college football has it worse right now than FSU. Unequivocally, the worst start. And they were ranked 10th. They're ranked 10th. Don't get me started on the fallacy of preseason rankings. It's fun to talk about, but to actually affix a number to them is problematic. They went from 10th to unranked in the blink of an eye. No one has it worse than FSU, but there are a lot of fan bases that aren't feeling great today. LSU, Clemson, Florida. We'll talk about those as we move throughout the program. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, I want to get back local and why, even though you had a fairly reasonable expectation of what the CSU Rams could do against Texas, that performance on Saturday is going to be tough to unsee. Started the show talking about Air Force as they move on from the Merrimack game and set their sights on the San Jose State Spartans, who are coached by a familiar face, Ken Niumatalolo, who, of course, was the head coach at Navy for forever. He's now leading the Spartans into Colorado Springs on Saturday evening, 5 o'clock kick. If you would like to be there, I have a 4-pack of tickets with your name on it. Granted that you are the 13th texter at 719-247-1313 to text Falcons and your name, because I got to put your name on the tickets. So if you want to go for the Falcons and Spartans Saturday evening, hit me up, 13th texter, Falcons and your name to 719-247-1313. I knew this was going to happen. Steve G, I knew this was going to happen. I am 42 minutes into the show. We've gotten 2 segments in. You're not giving me enough time to get to your Hurricanes, but I knew I was going to hear from you today. There may not be a fan base. I've been talking about the fan bases that may not feel great about the early returns on the college football season. I don't know that there is a fan base. USC's feeling really good. I've seen all the discord between Nebraska and CU fans. I know they're both feeling bullish about this week. There has got to be no fan base in America that is feeling better right now than fans of the Miami Hurricanes. And why not? You went into the swamp and you absolutely broke the Gators to the point where Billy Napier forgot a key piece of Florida architecture. What I mean by that, Billy Napier, not that I'm rooting for it, I have no skin in the game whatsoever, but I got to find out on Circus Sports where I can bet that Billy Napier will be fired, because I think he will. He forgot that basements aren't a thing in Florida, especially now. I haven't vouched for every home in Florida, but I have family down there. No basement. I don't like to put things into the ground because it's a bit, what's the word? Oh, the name of the stand, a swamp. It's a little swampy. He fired at the easiest place, guy in basement. Resorting to that. Can't listen to the guy in his basement. They don't have basements in Florida. The Miami Hurricanes have broken the Florida Gators and Billy Napier. You should feel great about your Hurricanes. Can we just, I know it's only week 1. Can we just send, how's this? Who's going to say no to this group? We'll just send Jackson Dart. We'll send Cam Ward. We'll send Shedeur Sanders, and pick your 4th guy. You want to send Travis Hunter? Send Travis Hunter. You want to send Ashton Jeanty from Boise, who ran for 6 touchdowns on Saturday? We could debate, do they invite 5? How many do they invite? Shedeur, Jackson Dart, Cam Ward, book their plane tickets to New York now. Certainly nothing between now and this season, end of the season, will change. They all look great. Cam Ward looked fantastic. Maybe that's who FSU should have poached from the Pac-2. Cam Ward, not DJU. Canes look great. My goodness, they look so good. Amazing what few million in NIL can get you these days. They look great. You know who else looked great? Texas. Texas looked pretty good. No one was expecting CSU to go in and beat Texas. That'd be silly. But didn't you expect more than you got if you're a Rams fan? You have combined $1.2 million worth just in NIL money between your quarterback and your wide receiver. 1.2 million can't get you one tutty. Can't get you in field goal range once against Texas. I know it is a very difficult balancing act. That was a payday game. I understand if you're in Fort Collins, you need that money. I understand it, but my goodness, you had to expect your team to put up a bigger fight than that. Kansas State was serious about paying Braden Fowler Nicolosi $600,000. Kansas State's a team that thinks they're going to go college football playoff. They would run up against Texas at some point. Ten of 18, 59 yards and a pick. Look, I know what games matter. I know the game that matters. And CSU fans, if they win that game in 2 weeks' time, everything else is found money. But how can you? And I don't think playing UNC is going to alter your perspective. Even if they look great against UNC, I don't know how Rams fans could feel overly confident against CU based on what they have seen. I mean, Arch Manning came in and was what, 8 of 9? It wasn't going to be pretty. It was going to be very lopsided. But I'm just speaking for myself. I expected more out of the Rams. I did. Maybe you didn't. I did. So I'm looking at it maybe through my own eyes and say, that's going to be tough to wash away. Look, offensively inept. And look, this is not the way, even given the financial realities of college football and how you have to schedule games like that. It's not a great way to start off what is a big year for Jay Norvell and Fort Collins. We can agree on that at least, yes? Year 1 to year 2, you saw progress. You saw improvement. And then these stories of $600,000 NIL payments started to go around, and it was puffing up this CSU team. Everybody wants our wide receiver. Everybody wants our quarterback, but we got him. We kept him because they believe in what we're doing in Fort Collins. And that, and then jump cut to Saturday. They might have to beat UNC by the same score Texas beat them by to hope to wipe that out. That wasn't a good first impression. But again, the theme throughout the show today is whether you're a Falcon fan, a Ram fan, or a Buff fan, I don't know how you can feel overly satisfied with what you saw in week 1. I think week 2 has to be much better. To restore some of the faith or to perpetuate some of the faith and hope that you may have for your team. It's got to be better. And look, a lot of fan bases nationally are feeling that way, but all three. I suppose if there was one that I thought we would get more, I thought we get more out of all three, but I would say my highest of expectations week 1 was probably with Air Force. The defense in the running game of CU certainly troubling. But Shador was brilliant, Travis Hunter was brilliant, and the game was close as I expected it to be. CSU, I thought there'd be a little bit more, but I knew they're not in the same solar system as Texas. So when I say I want more, I think points on the board. I thought there would be points on the board. I even thought there would be a touchdown. I mean, Merrimack was able to get into the end zone against Air Force. Could CSU find their way, stumble their way somehow into the end zone? Clemson scored against Georgia. But the question, which of those three teams, CU, CSU, Air Force, do you feel better about after week 1? And I know I'm asking it in a very intentional way because, again, all three left something to be desired. But I'm curious. 719-247-1313. Coming up next hour, talk with Corey Roldan of KKTV. He was in Boulder and he was in Colorado Springs over the weekend for those college football games. So I'll pose these same questions to him. Can I say this real quick? I wanted to ask him about LSU because those are his old neck of the woods down there. Like, what was this from Brian Kelly the other night?
We had some guys played their butts off tonight, and we're sitting here again. We're sitting here again talking about the same things, about not finishing when you have an opponent in a position to put them away. But what we're doing on the sideline is feeling like the game's over.
Didn't that sound a little awkward? Like, I have seen coaches pound a table. I've seen them hit a microphone. It seemed to me a little forced from Brian Kelly, who in the past has come across as a little phony. Remember the appearance at the LSU basketball game when he first got hired? Like that felt for, I got to do something more. It's not enough what I'm saying. And then he just like randomly hits the table. This is not just what LSU has done. This is what Brian Kelly has done. And I'm not out on LSU. I think this might be top to bottom the best team he's had at LSU. I think the other night is way more about USC. I think it's way more about USC. I think people wrote off Lincoln Riley. I think they wrote off USC. They lose Caleb Williams. I was thoroughly impressed with USC. I'm not down on LSU. But Brian Kelly always loses season openers, it seems like. He lost season openers at Notre Dame. I don't know. It felt a little forced, did not feel natural. Brian Kelly pounding the table after that loss to USC. And look, his criticism is valid. I'm not saying it's not, but just I don't know. It was awkward. I think LSU is going to be very good. I do. But I think USC is going to be much better than people are giving them credit for. I think USC is going to be really good. We'll see where that gets them in the Big Ten, because the Big Ten has a couple of super teams in it. 719-247-1313. The main event of the weekend, of course, when it comes to college football in this state, is the game in Lincoln. And I was doing some perusing because Circa Sports invites you to do this. If you're making a decision on whether you want to start placing your wagers on the Circa Sports Colorado app or somewhere else, they invite you to shop around. And I found if you feel good about Colorado's chances in Lincoln, get a bigger payoff by betting them at Circa Sports Colorado. And that's what they do. A lot of other sports books, they'll get you in with these grabby free bet offers. But if you're going to be, frequenting it, if you're going to be using it, that's going to go away. Ultimately, what you're left with are the odds. And at Circa Sports, their odds are their promos. They strive to be a minus 110 split, unlike other sports books, which may use minus 115 or minus 20 to keep a little bit of a hold for themselves. When you look at futures markets, they have some of the best payouts in those that you're going to find anywhere. And like I said, they invite you to take a look around, shop around. That's how confident they are. And if you ever run into an issue, which I have not yet, but if you ever do, just know that real people, the same people that are behind the Circa Sports brand in Vegas, will be there to assist you. Download the Circa Sports Colorado app today. Must be 21 years or older and present in Colorado to bet. Gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome in, Drive Time Sports. Appreciate you tuning in, whether it's on your radio, online, or through the new and improved Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All. Corey Roldan of KKTV will join me to talk a little bit about what we saw in week one of the college football season. But I want to start this hour talking about week two. And as I just got done talking about the main event of the weekend, Colorado and Nebraska. Now, if you recall, it was not a very, what do I want to say? It felt like there was some bad blood. Right? Shador talked after the game about what Matt Rule said about his father. And it was personal in nature. The 36-14 win they had against the Huskers. But Deion Sanders is making headlines today. I saw one on ESPN. Caught my eye. Whoa. It's not personal. Coach Prime loving on Matt Rule this week. Take a listen.
Ton of respect for Matt Rule. He's in, I call it our class of coaches. We all, took on a tremendous test that year, along with Coach Dillingham and several others. So I feel like we're a fraternity. So I root for that class of head coaches that came in that year.
And I'm not going to sit here and say that Deion Sanders said some things to that effect last year. But people are like, whoa, not personal anymore. Well, hold on a minute. That's what he says at his weekly press conference. But here in our backyard, or up the road a little bit, this is what he said on his coach's show this week.
And today, and the theme of the whole week, this is personal. This ain't no game. This ain't no play. This is personal, and we're going to address it as such.
Wait a minute. It's not personal, but it is personal. Deion Sanders knows what he's doing. This is where bulletin board material is born. The weekly press conference. And you watch Matt Rule. Same thing. Both of these coaches are nothing but complimentary of one another. They both gushed about the respect they have for one another, the respect they have for each other's football team. And it's probably for the best. There's a reason why coaches usually play it this way. It's hard enough to win college football games week in and week out without adding some additional motivation. But I think there's something more to this. I legitimately think that both of these coaches are scared to death about what each team's quarterback is capable of. I do. And that certainly exists already when it comes to Nebraska. I know it was UTEP, but did you see Dylan Raiola? Did you see him throw the ball? He could not be more different than what came to Boulder last year. Which was quarterbacks that you would be wise not to throw the football. Dylan Raiola can sling it. I think this Dylan Raiola being on Nebraska completely changes things. Now, I'm not going to say changes it to the extent that Nebraska wins or Nebraska loses, but the dynamic completely changes. Because now it's like Nebraska, and this is the whole thing right now in Lincoln. Like they feel like they got a guy. Like they're no longer bring a knife to a gunfight. Which is what they were all of last year. And what they were against CU. Shedeur Sanders was infinitely more talented than his counterparts because they played multiple quarterbacks. Now Nebraska feels like, okay, now we're on equal foot. You got your guy, we got our guy. Now, close game, late, I'll still trust Shedeur Sanders over Dylan Raiola making his second collegiate start. But the game's in Lincoln, and it feels different because of Raiola. It feels like Nebraska can, not that they would prefer to do this because, again, it's Shedeur. You probably shouldn't get into, TCU found out about a lot of teams last year found out about if you just want to get into a shootout with Shedeur Sanders. Get some stops, right? Don't just trade touchdown for touchdown. That's what CU wants. That plays into their hands. Nebraska's going to be trying to get some stops. But Dylan Raiola changes things. And I'd be very curious to see, and especially going up against the Buffs defense that looked very much like last year's version. And let's not forget this aspect of last year's meeting in Boulder. The turnovers that Nebraska had, almost all of them immediately led to points. The Buffs were extremely opportunistic. And that's still something that Dylan Raiola, he's got to take care of the football. For sure. But Nebraska's got to be feeling, okay, we have Dylan Raiola. We won't turn the football over as much as we did in Boulder. The game's in our house. I understand why Nebraska fans are bullish on their chances this weekend. And I understand why both of these coaches are not looking to add anything to this matchup. Because I think they both know that's bad. You think Matt Rule wants to motivate Shedeur Sanders again? No way. Steph Curry said this during the Olympics. He had the phrase, a healthy fear. I think that's what you hear from both of these coaches. I think there's a healthy fear. Not to say they're not confident in their team's ability to win, but there's a healthy fear of the opposition, and specifically a healthy fear of the quarterbacks that will be meeting in Lincoln this weekend. Doesn't need to be personal. Because it is. And that's the other part of this too. Do you as a Colorado Buffaloes fan really need Deion Sanders to tell you that this is personal? I know he has to remind his players because 42 of them weren't here last year. But as far as stoking the flames between the fan base, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. So what purpose does it serve? To get up there and add fuel to the fire. There's no benefit to it. This is a heated rivalry. It feels like, I think it even, wait till Saturday, of course, because we're still a ways off, but it felt like the rivalry was back last year because at least one of the teams were pretty high profile. The stakes felt high. I think it takes another notch up because you have two extremely talented quarterbacks playing in this game and not just one. I can't wait for this game. This game's going to be so fun. It's not personal. Tell that to literally everybody on my timeline. You know, on X, Elon's getting in his tweets. I see what Elon is thinking. That's a given. I always expect to see that. Fair amount of politics, and then the rest is see you, Nebraska. Even though both the official line from both teams, coaches, fan bases is don't give them anything. And yet, both fan bases are just absolutely laying into one another. And they've been doing it for like the last 4 days. I don't think Nebraska and CU fans even did anything over Labor Day weekend other than yell at each other, which I'm here for. I love it. I'm here for the discourse. It gets a little ugly at times, but most of it's all in good fun. Given where these two programs have been, this feels good. Takes me back to my younger days. When both teams were relevant. When both teams legitimately felt like they had a shot to beat one another. You know what you get from Shedeur Sanders, which is nothing short of brilliance. But this Dylan Raiola kid, there's a reason Nebraska went to the, how should I put this, lengths to secure his services. And what finding the guy at that position does for you at this level of college football. And it feels like Nebraska has that. It's just a matter of how quickly will Dylan Raiola show that. Because even if you're down on CU a little bit, even if you don't believe in them, they're better than UTEP. So I'm fascinated to see how he does in his first real, just speak in truths here. His first real college football game. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts, your feelings, your predictions for Nebraska CU. Lot of CU Nebraska stuff this week on the show. We'll get it going today. Coming up next, Corey Roldan of KKTV 11 will join me. His takeaways from week 1 of the college football season, specifically when it comes to the Buffs, the Falcons, and maybe even, I think they're his Tigers. I'll confirm that next on Extra Sports 1300.
1300.
Week 1 of the college football season is in the books. All 3 of our local teams, with all due respect to the folks in Greeley or the folks at the Division II level, but CU, CSU, Air Force, all in action in Week 1. Joining me now to discuss the early returns from the college football season is Corey Roldan of KKTV 11 Sports. Corey, I feel like I haven't talked to you in like 3 hours. How are you?
Doing well, my friend. Doing well. Just preparing for the show, which we were actually talking a lot of Air Force and CU. But it was a interesting first week of college football. We had a really fun game in Colorado versus North Dakota State, then a not so fun game to watch in Air Force and Merrimack, and then an absolute let's not talk about game in CSU versus Texas.
I already did talk about that, so maybe we've covered all that we need to cover with CSU. In your line of work, you have to be sometimes judicious with how many words you say. In this format, with me, I'm incredibly verbose and I just talk and use a lot of words. You would think I was paid by the word, but you have tight windows that you got to fit all the profundity that you are going to share on a nightly sportscast. So I'm going to put that to the test
Correct.
here. Give me one word to describe CU North Dakota State game.
Expected.
From every aspect.
From every aspect.
Mm.
Expected because we expected Colorado to have the best 2 players in the country, potentially. Shedeur Sanders, incredible. He's going to be a top 5 pick for a reason. 445 yards. He was really, really good. Travis Hunter, I mean, he's the best player in college football, playing 120-something snaps at altitude, and he's the best player every snap. It's impressive. But it's also expected because the same problems they had last year, Ryan, and their offensive and defensive lines kind of got bullied against an FCS team, and they're not your typical FCS team. North Dakota State has won, 9 national titles in 13 years. Their offensive line in that first half really dominating CU's front, just making big gap holes. They scored 20 points in about 20 minutes. Now, CU did improve in the second half defensively, but it's just expected. It's what I expected this game to be. I wasn't really impressed by some of the changes that CU has made. Shedeur was, a little better pass protection, but still North Dakota State, right? It's not really expecting a lot of pass rush from North Dakota State.
But isn't there a little bit of a feeling that, given what we saw last year from Shedeur, that's maybe all he needs is like a little bit more pass protection, and he can make a ton out of it?
You're right, but sometimes I wish he understands that it's okay to throw the football away sometimes. There's like 3 or 4 plays where he took a sack because he held on to the football too long, or he's just running for his life and then he throws it away his last second. Just a little bit more awareness on that would really help his game. But you're right. We'll see this week, though, because Nebraska is going to have a way better pass rush than North Dakota State. This game is going to be so interesting to me, Ryan, just in so many different aspects, from Nebraska's freshman quarterback and Patrick Mahomes' little cousin. He's not really his cousin, but you know what I'm saying. Dylan Raiola, who looked really good against UTEP. But I'm just very excited for this game.
Yeah, I just got done talking. It feels like, and I know that Shedeur, it's reasonable to expect Shedeur to outplay Dylan Raiola. Dylan Raiola is in his second game,
yeah.
But I think I was just talking about, I think the feeling around the Husker fan base is we're not bringing a knife to a gunfight anymore. I mean, forgive there's probably a better metaphor to use, but you get what I'm saying. Like, oh, we have one of those guys too. Maybe he's not better than Shador, but compared to what they brought into Boulder last year with, it feels a lot different, even for a guy that's going to be making his second collegiate start.
Yeah, that's right. But really last year, CU won the game up front, which was surprising with a Nebraska team that plays in the Big Ten. You would expect them to kind of impose their will, which I think they're going to try to do on Saturday as well, is just kind of impose their will up front, run the football, which they did pretty well against, obviously it's a UTEP squad in the Conference USA. I keep forgetting what conference they're in, but 223 yards rushing, about 5 yards a carry. They ran the ball 47 times on Saturday. I would expect that as well. They try to pound the football. Then, you know what? Let the freshman kid make plays, because he's shown you in that game he could throw some dimes. He can kind of move around in the pocket. But it's going to be – I just want Colorado to keep this game close in the fourth quarter with about 5 minutes to go and let your two Heisman candidates win you the game in the end. If they can do that, I like their chances of pulling off this win in Lincoln. But you can't let this game get away from you. You can't let Nebraska just sit there, control the clock. You got to get some stops and keep Shador, Travis Hunter in this game.
I'm glad you brought up the Heisman thing. And look, I marvel at Travis Hunter like everybody else. I just think that Shador, and I don't mean this in a negative way, because Shador's brilliant and deserves what the praise that people heap upon him, but he, like most quarterbacks do, he kind of sucks all the air out of the room. So it's like, I certainly can't see, forget how CU fares this year. I certainly can't see them, even if they have a great season, to have two guys in New York. And I feel like what I'm saying is the biggest impediment. I agree with all the sentiment around Travis Hunter. The biggest impediment to him going to New York is his teammate.
Well, dude, if they go 10-2 and make the playoffs, I think I'm being honest, I think Travis Hunter should be ahead of Shador in the Heisman candidate. And I get Shador, he's the quarterback, he's leading the team, but when's the last time, was it Charles Woodson, the last time we saw a guy play both sides of the football?
Yeah, not to interrupt, but even Charles Woodson was on, I think it was Bussin' with the Boys, and he's like, I didn't really play offense. Like, Travis Hunter legitimately plays both sides of the football.
Like, 1950s, that dude, he's a unicorn.
Yeah.
He is a unicorn, and he's doing it at altitude when people struggle to breathe. And he's playing 120 snaps, and he's the best player on defense, and he's the best player on offense. He's just – and, dude, some of his catches he made, Ryan, where he stopped his body like a cat, it was ridiculous. That one-handed catch with the touchdown and is getting all the love. But there was a third down pass. I showed it on Sunday where there's a little behind him, and he just stops his body mid-running to make that catch. It was – dude, he is one of the most impressive football players I have covered.
Yeah, I would love to be wrong. I feel like Travis did this last year too, and all anyone could talk about was Shador. So
and also if you win 4 games, neither's going to be in the Heisman candidate.
True. Yeah, no, and that's fair. I'm just saying I felt like, and this is what I urged last Friday after the game, is let's not grow complacent with what we're seeing with Travis Hunter. I mean, it's like Shohei Ohtani's going for a 50-50 season and nobody cares. And nobody cares, but that's because it's baseball, I think, is a big reason why. But it's also because we get complacent and just expect it every week. I hope we don't do that with Travis, but I felt like we did a little bit last year.
No, 100%. You got 2 top 5 picks, and Travis Hunter is a player that doesn't come around often. He's a unicorn. That Ohtani comparison is right on.
Yeah. Corey Roldan, KKTV 11, my guest. You were there at Falcon Stadium on Saturday. Let me do the one word thing with you when it comes to Air Force. What would be your one word to describe that win against Merrimack?
Rough. No, inexperienced.
I like that better. Yeah.
Inexperienced, because it kind of showed, right? You only have 4 returning starters, if that. And it was just a slugfest against a team that went below 500 at the FCS level last year. Offensively, the line kind of struggled to get any separation, right? John Boucher, who we've been praising all fall camp, kind of misfired. For granted, his 2 top receivers were out. Running backs, really no burst, no broken tackles against an FCS team. Offensive as a whole is just 3 touchdowns. Defense set them up nicely a couple times, Ryan.
I thought the defense was really good.
Yes, defense is really good, but offensively, defense gave them the ball a couple times in the red zone. They couldn't capitalize one time, missed field goal, and they got another touchdown off of that. So they had 21 points. The defense, set them up pretty well a couple of times, but defensively really good. The secondary, man. The secondary, Camby Goff, Trey Williams, Brown, and Jamari Bellamy, really good. That's going to be a fun matchup. The receivers of San Jose State versus this secondary is the best on best matchup for this week. But the linebackers looked really good. The defensive line looked really good. Now I want to see them versus pass rush. But defensively, they were flying around the football. They were disciplined. They forced turnovers, everything you would want in a game. Offensively, it was just inexperienced and rough.
I think it was. And look, you expected more, even with knowing that going in. But it felt like, okay, I kind of understand. And look, I think that Dylan Carson going out certainly
that's a
impacted the way that they did things. I think that they only need to be a little bit better to beat San Jose State. But you look down the road and you got these 2 games with Baylor and especially Wyoming. And it's like this offense needs to, at least by then, improve leaps and bounds. Maybe not.
It needs to have a pulse.
Yeah.
Just have a pulse.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
Yeah. Corey rolled in, KKTV 11, my guess. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just think I think Boucher is going to, by the middle of the season, is going to be a pretty good Air Force style quarterback, because he showed his ability to run. He says he wanted some plays back, but his passing ability, he had some nice throws, had some really bad throws, but I just feel like once he gets that rhythm, that's when this offense really going to take off.
Are they your Tigers, LSU? Do you?
Yeah, man. You're bringing this up.
No, but let me do it in this way, because I just talked about it last hour. I'm not down on your boys. I'm not down on them. I think that game was more about how maybe people shouldn't have written off USC.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way, or are you in line with like Gator fans and Clemson fans and you want to? Okay.
No, absolutely not. And LSU fans are irrational. I can tell you right now. It's just disappointing for the 5th straight year when you're a program that's won 3 national titles in the last 20 years to lose 5 straight season opening games, which LSU always plays a top 20 team to start the season. So it's never a bad loss.
Mm-hmm.
Just disappointing in that aspect. I'm not all the way down because LSU has the talent. They looked improved on defense. They got way too complacent offensively in the second half. I would have let Garrett Nussmeier go out there and sling it a little bit more, which I liked Garrett Nussmeier's game until the second half. But it's just some of the self-inflicting penalties, plays hurt them in that game. But you're right, Riley. Miller Moss really looked good. Lincoln Riley, the way he kind of called that game and to save their time at the end and not rush for the 2-minute drill, it was impressive, by USC. And but no, we are nowhere near Florida. Billy Napier is going to get fired in about 2 weeks. We're not Clemson. We're not Florida State. LSU is going to be fine. They might go 9-3 again this year. And, Tiger fans they got to calm down because Brian Kelly is recruiting very well. And he's bringing something this program hasn't seen since Les Miles and Nick Saban, stability.
And usually he figures it out in year 3.
Yes.
Yeah. Year 3
we'll
is usually. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it might be next year that he completely figures it out and they're a national title contender again. But, I'm not completely down on him. I'm gonna be honest right now. I'm more excited about Tulane's game against Kansas State on Saturday.
Well, we don't have time to talk.
I know.
Green
roll wave, baby.
How do you? But I did smile a bit a couple weeks ago when your boy Pratt came into the preseason game. And I was like, oh, Corey's got to be loving this.
Yeah, he struggled, man. He's on, I think, the Bucks, but yeah, he struggled mightily in that preseason game. But Tajay Spears is looking good for the Titans, running back. Y'all got fantasy football. Draft Tajay Spears this year.
There you go. All right, how many leagues are you in?
3. I try to keep it at 3 max. I'm in 2 regular and I'm in 1 auction. So.
Okay. You own one thing, and just, for future maybe we just do it. Those guillotine leagues are really calling my name. Have you heard about these where the lowest, it's like rotisserie baseball, basically. It's just the most points. You don't go head to head. And then the lowest score gets eliminated.
You're out. Yes. One of my best friends mentioned that to me 2 weeks ago. And I was like, okay, what if I do 1 regular, 1 auction, 1 guillotine?
Yeah.
I was like, dude, it's very enticing to do that next year. But you pay for $100 to get in the league or $50 and you have the lowest score week 1, you're done.
Yeah, but the adrenaline rush, man.
Yeah.
Living on the edge. That's what we look for. All right. So you and me, we'll get into one next year. We'll play it, the normal way for this season, at least. Let me ask you, transitioning from Michael Pratt and fantasy football to Sunday, is there anything that you're expecting out of the Broncos against Seattle?
Bo Nix, short, easy throws early on the game to get Bo Nix in rhythm. Sean Payton is an expert at this. When I mean short, easy throws, you get Marvin Mims in motion, play action, dump the ball off to Mims in the flat for a good 5-6 yard gain. Just something easy to get Bo Nix going and started. Seattle, this is the first time they're not going to have Pete Carroll as a head coach since 2009, 2010. I'm expecting them to kind of be the same team, but I expect the Broncos offense to kind of be the same efficient team. I know people are like, oh, it's the regular season. Bo Nix is going to see different looks, but I don't think Peyton's going to go out there and force him to just make these big, dramatic Patrick Mahomes plays. I think the offense is going to kind of get him going by making easy throws to start. And then once they start running the football, then you start taking the shots outfield.
Yeah, that's week 2. Week 2 is when Bo Nix is going to be showcased like Patrick Mahomes, because Sean Payton is going to want to absolutely show off his new quarterback against
Dude, he's
the Steelers.
A petty human being.
Yeah, he is.
Sean,
he's brilliant. He's brilliant, but
he's
petty. Yeah.
Dude, 2016, Greg Williams, who's the Bounty Gate defensive coordinator, was the DC of the Rams They won that game like 56-14 in the fourth quarter. Already have 40 points up. He's throwing triple reverse passes for touchdowns. I'm letting you know.
Oh,
The
man.
Superdome, Saints Broncos, and then week 2 against the Steelers, Petty Sean will be out in full force.
So I saw you earlier today at Air Force. Is that the plan this evening on Channel 11?
Yes, we start with Air Force, talk about their mistakes and how the offensive line is trying to clean up those mistakes, and also Coach Prime a little bit, talking about what he expects from Nebraska and why he is confident. So, yeah, it's 5:30, and then more Air Force at 10. And I believe Jeff's going to talk about a little Broncos as well. So, fun night in sports here at KKTV.
Yeah, always we go from, okay, what are we going to talk about, to, my goodness, I have too much to talk about. I need less,
100%.
but it's a good problem.
No Rockies.
Right. It's right. Oh, amen to that. Corey, appreciate your time, bud, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. Always glad to jump on.
Yep, my pleasure. Corey Roldan, KKTV 11 Sports, joining us here on Drive Time Sports. Lot going on, and now it's still just previewing the Broncos season. Soon we'll have Broncos games to react to. It is a magical time of year, is it not? 719-247-1313. Heavy on the college football today. CU, CSU, Air Force, Miami, FSU, LSU. I watched so much college football this weekend. So if you got a team you want to talk about, let's chop it up. 719-247-1313. Congratulations to Dustin, won 4-pack of tickets to see Air Force take on San Jose State this Saturday evening. But you shouldn't be jealous of Dustin, because I have another opportunity for you right now to win another 4-pack of tickets to see Air Force host San Jose State in the conference opener this Saturday, 5 o'clock at Falcons Stadium. Be the 13th texter to text Falcons and your name to 719-247-1313. Going back to the theme of the day, which is, week one, and these local football teams of ours, CU, CSU, Air Force, week one kind of showing that it's a work in progress. The improvement or the level that you may have expected those three teams to be at this year, they're not there. The question is now, can they reach it? I think one thing that you bank on when you decide, okay, is CU going to get better? Is CSU going to get better? Is Air Force going to get better? I think the biggest thing that you bank on, and really what you ask yourself, which coach do you trust? Because if you trust the coach, that's how teams get better. You see a lot of sentiment, like this was good, this not so much, but this will improve. Well, why? Who's to say that what you did good in a game? And I see this from Notre Dame. Now, it's not a great example because I do think Notre Dame is going to be very good this year, and I think that was a huge win, a necessary win that they got against Texas A&M. But like this sentiment that, oh, the offense is going to come along, are you sure about that? You're saying the defense is going to stay that good the entire season and this other part will come up? Maybe this is just Notre Dame. Again, I think it's somewhat reasonable to expect Riley Leonard to play better as the season goes on. But we do that where we take the good and say that's going to be the case all the time, and now you just got to improve this. Well, do you know that for a fact? The improvement, the teams that improve and look different from week 1 to week 10, 11, 12 are the best coached teams. So, which one of those three teams would you say is the best coached? I think unequivocally you would say it's Air Force. CU, you saw a team last year that didn't evolve, didn't improve. It was the same formula every single game. It didn't look better. In many ways, the best performance they had was against TCU. And then it just was worse after that. With CSU, they won 5 games. Better than the 2 they won the year before. But the teams that improve from the beginning of the year towards the end are the best coach teams, not necessarily the ones with the most talent. Now, if you are particularly young, like let's say, for example, Dylan Raiola, it's reasonable to expect Dylan Raiola to be better 5-6 weeks from now than maybe he will be against CU. And that's also part of, if you're an Air Force fan, I think you put a lot of stock into is these guys are going, the more reps they have, the better. So if you are inexperienced, it's reasonable to expect improvement week over week, month over month. But you still have to have that coaching. And ultimately, it comes down to that. Now, CU has made changes, right? It's Pat Shurmur's gig offensively the whole year, right? Not just part of it. You got Livingston on the defensive side. So maybe you feel like CU's coaching staff is better. But if you're wondering whether you're a Falcon fan, Ram fan, or Buff fan, whether it will be better, because I don't know that any of those three fan bases should be particularly over the moon thrilled about what they saw. But the improvement comes from a coaching staff. You're going to learn, you're going to evolve, you're going to coach up these guys. That's what you have to ask yourself. And just from my perspective, looking at these three teams, the team that I would expect to improve the most after week one is Air Force. With CSU, there's this feeling of it can't be worse. And yes, obviously, when CSU plays teams more at their level, then it will look better on the scoreboard. Right? But this is a season where I don't know that 5 wins is going to be okay again. So the one of those three teams, if I had to pick one that I'm most confident in, will be better week 2 and moving forward, it's Air Force. The other two teams, CSU, it's going to look better just by the level of talent that they're going to play from here on out. But I have some serious questions about whether CU is going to hit another gear. Now, what they played at with Shedeur and Travis is good enough to beat a few teams on their schedule. And again, I think they'll be a bowl team. That's what prediction I have for them this year. But if they're going to be better than that, they got to do more than they did against North Dakota State. And what better time to show it than against your most hated rival? 719-247-1313. Get back into the college football talk after the top of the hour. Speaking of that game between Colorado and Nebraska on Saturday, I was looking around at the spread. You could get their spread is Nebraska -7. Looked at a few other places. It's 7.5. That pesky hook. Ooh, that pesky hook. I looked at a lot of Circa Sports Colorado's lines. That hook is missing from quite a few because they pride themselves on having best type money line splits, low holds. Just quite simply the best odds that you're going to get at any book. And they encourage you to shop around to see for yourself. That's how confident they are. And Circa Sports does not limit players based on their winnings. Every player has the same limits, unlike other sportsbook who do limit winning players. They keep as little money as possible on large market bets as well. They're in it for the experience. Obviously, you know the relationship between a sportsbook and a bettor, right? But they strive to keep as low money as possible on some of these markets because they want the experience to be as good as it can be. So try it for yourself. Download the Circa Sports Colorado app today. Must be 21 years or older and present in Colorado to bet. Gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this fine Tuesday in the fine state of Colorado. A reminder, you can watch the show live, whether you're in Colorado or anywhere. As long as you follow us on social media at XTRA Sports 1300. It's our handle on Facebook and on X and on Instagram and on YouTube. You can watch the show on any one of those platforms on a daily basis. If you'd like to do a bit more than just watch or listen and you'd like to interact or perhaps win things, 709-247-1313 is the text and the phone line. Speaking of, congrats to Kyle, won our latest 4-pack of tickets to see Air Force take on San Jose State on Saturday. Do not fret. Plenty more opportunities this week. And in fact, I got another giveaway this hour that I kind of love because it's a little bit off the beaten path. You know, I'm always tickets, and these are tickets, but to something else. Hopefully I have piqued your interest. That's coming up a little bit later this hour. In the meantime, let's get rolling with the 3 stories that are driving the show. All college football, baby. All right, let's start the closest to home and work our way out, shall we? Here's story number 1.
2 receivers left, 1 to the right. Boucher, quick pitch left side. Harris with it, gets a block. Touchdown! Air Force! Cade Harris around the left side from 5 yards out.
That's my buddy, Jim Arthur from Learfield. One of the, to be fair, few offensive highlights from Air Force's season opening game against Merrimack. They did win, and that, last time I checked, is the primary objective every week in college football. But what you saw on Saturday, especially on the offensive side of the football, was a team that is one of the least experienced in college football. Their roster may say senior, junior. These guys have 2 games, 3 games, and their entire careers under their belt. If I told you going into the game that Air Force was the most inexperienced team in college football, you would then watch that game and say, yep, I can see it. Offensively, they just looked out of sync. I think Dylan Carson getting hurt and exiting that game, I think he's very important to what they want to do. And him not being in there, I think affected them. John Boucher threw the ball 14 times. That is more than all but 2 games last year for Air Force in terms of passing attempts in a game. Only Army and Boise did they throw the ball more, and Army doesn't even barely count because that game got off the rails and it was Air Force was down big. For them to throw the ball 14 times in a win is like borderline unheard of. But when you're averaging 3 yards a carry on the ground, which was lower than any single game last year except for Navy, which kind of knows their way around an Air Force offense, right? Kind of knows what to expect. You got to throw the ball 14 times. What I'm curious to see is just how much of what we saw on Saturday is what Air Force is trying to do this year and how much of it is out of necessity for that one game. And here's what I mean by that. Obviously, you want to see Air Force's offense do better against San Jose State and moving forward. But the play calling that occurred, the number of times they threw the ball in a game that they were controlling, right? You may not love what you saw on Saturday, but Air Force was in no danger of losing that football game. Like, they controlled it, thanks in large part to their defense. So obviously the results have to be better. The yards per carry, all that kind of stuff needs to be better. But what I'm curious to see is kind of the same thing I've been curious to see leading up to the season opener. Are they going to open it up more? Are they going to throw the football more than we expect an Air Force team to do? I know they're not going to suddenly turn into Cliff Kingsbury's Texas Tech teams, But are we going to see a little bit more throwing of the football? And what the impetus of that is? Is it John Boucher's ability to throw? Is it, a run game that maybe is not what it has been in years past? It could be a little bit of both, but I need more. It's too small a sample size, but a lot of questions, a lot of curiosity rising out of that Air Force season opening win against Merrimack. The one thing that I am not surprised about, not curious about, this defense is really good. And when they face teams that can actually threaten down the field, that's actually the position group I would feel best about if I'm an Air Force fan. I think that secondary has a chance to be really good this year. Really good. And Peyton Zadroik just wrecking games on the defensive line. The defense is going to have to lead the way for these first couple of weeks until the offense can get in sync, until they can figure out what they can do well in a game situation. But that's the theme of week 1 around these parts, I think, in college football, is that it needs to be better. Week 2. None of these 3 teams are feeling like the Miami Hurricanes. After week 1, all of them should feel like there's much work to be done going into week 2 and moving forward. Speaking of which, here's a team that will highlight the week 2 slate, subject of story number 2.
Ton of respect for Matt Rule. He's in, I call it our class of coaches. We all, took on a tremendous test that year, along with Coach Dillingham and several others. So I feel like we're a fraternity. So I root for that class of head coaches that came in that year.
That is Deion Sanders earlier today as he met the media in advance of that huge tilt this weekend against the Nebraska Cornhuskers. No, it's personal. No, he said something about my dad. None of that stuff this week. It is all respect. Except he did say it was personal on his coach's show this week. So, but at any rate, I think the reason why the temperature is being lowered a little bit for this game by both sides. Like, I watched Matt Rule's press conference. Both coaches are trying to lower the temperature. And I think the reason is because, to use Steph Curry's phrase from the Olympics, there is a healthy fear of what these two teams present, especially at the quarterback position. Nebraska saw up close and personal what Shedeur Sanders is. But I think CU got a glimpse of Matt Rule's shiny new toy, Dylan Raiola. I don't think you need to give in it above the fact that this is already a rivalry and the fans will raise the temperature for you because Nebraska and Buffs fans are at each other already and will continue to be that way. It's a little counterproductive to add fuel to that fire. But I think both teams understand that these quarterbacks that they're going up against can be problems. And Dylan Raiola, he can spin it. Now, late in a game, I'll take Shedeur Sanders over Dylan Raiola. But it's he's what's different. Really. Talk about personal and, the temperature and all that kind of stuff. That's one thing. What feels different about this game is that Nebraska is not fighting with one hand tied behind their back. Right? They have a guy who can sling it at the quarterback position. They have a guy that can attack this CU defense, and they did not have that last year. Now, the same rules apply for Dylan Raiola as they apply to every young quarterback. Got to pressure him. Got to force him into making mistakes. UTEP did not do that. So there's a pathway here for CU. It's doable. Absolutely it is. But I think there's, call it respect, call it fear, call it what you will. This feels different. And the only thing that is different other than the venue is who Nebraska has behind center. More college football. Here's story number 3 from last night.
Now Castellanos throwing. Caught. Touchdown, Boston College. Kai Robichaux is the Eagle in the end zone. Left flat, 4-yard pitch and catch. BC leads 20-6.
That is John Meter Perrell from Learfield, and last night was, quite frankly, tough to watch. The Florida State offense especially looks lost. And now that's 2 games in a row now where DJU has not looked great, and 2 games in a row now where this vaunted Florida State defensive line that people will try to convince you is just as good, if not better, than a line with Braden Fisk and Jared Verse on it, gets dominated at the point of attack. BC handled FSU. It was supposed to be a get-right game for Florida State. Oh, okay, Dublin, long trip, whatever. We got caught. No problem. Well, now you're 0-2. And every other fan base in America, no matter how bad they feel about what happened in week 0, week 1, is looking around and saying, at least we're not FSU. It has been a disastrous start to the season for a team that was supposed to reclaim their rightful place in the college football playoff. And it's not, again, the defensive line isn't showing what I was told they would show. It's not all on DJU. But we're 2 games into his 3rd spot, and he looks the same as he did in his previous 2 places, where he said it was the system he was in. He blamed the system at Clemson. Went to Oregon State, put up identical numbers. Identical. And then has looked like this for 2 games. We do this with quarterbacks. Pittsburgh Steelers fans are doing it, and just like the Broncos fans did before them with Russell Wilson. Right? You tell yourself that it will be better. All he needs is a change of uniform. He looks better in our colors, and he'll be better. No, listen to the people who invested in these people. Clemson was like, yeah, he's not our guy. He's not. And DJU can make it about the system and make it his choice all he wants. He would still be at Clemson if Dabo absolutely needed him to be. They let him go. And it hasn't been better. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show. Coming up next, just in the nick of time, the San Francisco 49ers are whole again. So are they ready to go back and play the Chiefs in the Super Bowl this year? Now, you know what you're getting ready for. You probably already started with college football kicking off, but you understand that if you are a football fan, there's very little else that you have time for once we get into the season. And you may be, can't go out tonight, can't go on vacation, can't do this, can't do that. It's football season. Well, our friends at Icon Cinemas want to give you one last chance to take the family out before you really get locked in to football season. This Sunday, they are having a special screening of the new movie Beetlejuice. I will not say it a third time. At 6:00. So, right after the Denver game, mosey on over, Icon Cinemas, take the family out, and let them know that this will be the last time that you leave the house until February. Or you could just, maybe that's just me. You're probably a normal person that's like, you know what, I can balance. Either way, kind of cool that Icon is doing this and giving me an opportunity to give you a 4-pack of passes to see this long-awaited sequel. If you want to go, text Beetlejuice only once. If you do it 3 times, I'll be very upset with you and you will be disqualified. Just once, Beetlejuice, and your name to 719-247-1313. The 13 texter to do that will win a 4-pack of passes to see Beetlejuice this Sunday at Icon Cinemas. And yeah. Thanks again to the folks up there for providing the opportunity. There's nothing like a good deadline to get things moving, right? This happened last year a little bit with the Kansas City Chiefs when it came to Chris Jones. Now, Chris Jones did go into the season with his holdout. But when you have the actual start of the season, it does get both sides to kind of pick up their game a little bit. Not to say that last year the Chiefs and Chris Jones weren't working, weren't talking. They were. But it becomes more real now. Right? The season's starting up. Okay. Do you want to be here for week 1? Do we want you here for week 1? Let's get this done. And in the last basically week, we have seen the 49ers secure the services of Brandon Ayuk and now today Trent Williams. So they're good to go. And they got it, credit to John Lynch, got it done before the season started, as opposed to Brett Veach. But yeah, I just don't I don't think Trent Williams or Brandon Ayuk wanted to practice. I mean, when a deal goes down, especially Trent Williams. Like Ayuk, I know there were other layers to it, and he was probably contemplating his future. Trent Williams wasn't going to go anywhere, right? It wasn't the same situation. It was just pay up. And hey, if I can sit out practice at my age, he's a guy that probably deserves to sit out of training camp to an extent. I mean, to hold in. But the 49ers got it done. They got it all done. And the last dance of these 49ers is on. Because that's what this is. after this year, that plucky young QB out of Iowa State is going to get his payday. And the 49ers will look somewhat different than this from then on. Now, the interesting thing about getting the Ayuk deal done and making a multi-year deal is now it kind of changes. And I thought it was Ayuk that was the guy that was going to be playing his last season in San Francisco. Now I got to think it's Debo. But this has that kind of feel for the 49ers. Not to say that their championship window is closed, because I don't believe it is after this year. I think they're going to be around for a while. Now, when Trent Williams retires, check back with me, because I think that might be the most problematic thing that could happen to this and detrimental thing that could happen to the San Francisco 49ers and their championship hopes. But if they have him and they have CMC and Brock Purdy continues to play at the level he's played at, they're still going to compete. And I don't see, I like the Packers a lot this year. I think the Bears are coming on. I don't see a lot of other teams in the NFC where I say, look out for them. And look, I wasn't feeling that way about the Green Bay Packers. So that's one of the things that comes up during the season is somebody will pop up and you're like, whoa, wasn't expecting that. It's like, whoa, Arizona is good. Kyler Murray seems to think they'll be. Their championship window is going to be open, but I think you can say that last year, this iteration of the 49ers is their best chance to win a Super Bowl. And even though they will absolutely be in the conversation for the next couple of years after they pay Brock Purdy, I think, Bosa's not going anywhere. Like, they're still going to be really good, but they're not going to be as good as they are right now. They're not as good with just Brandon Ayuk and not Debo. They're not as dangerous. So it almost feels like the way we looked at Buffalo last year. Maybe you're looking at Baltimore this way too, coming into the season. Like, if not now, then when? Right? If the 49ers don't win a Super Bowl this year, when they were able to retain the services of Ayuk and Trent Williams, they didn't even miss any games. They still don't have to pay Brock Purdy. Who knows? They may go out and swing a trade for somebody. 49ers have done that in the past. But I think there is a feeling around the San Francisco 49ers that if not this year, then when? Because you can't just wait for Patrick Mahomes to retire. Like, you got to be a little bit proactive. You got to go and take a championship. That's the one thing I hate. Well, just wait. Right? That's what the whole league said. Just wait till Brady and Belichick break up. And then it will open up and everyone will get an opportunity. Just wait for Tom Brady to go away. Well, how'd that work out? We just handed the NFL from one dynasty to the next. You can't just sit idly by and wait for the Chiefs. Well, you're going to wait for Kelsey to retire and Chris Jones to leave via free agency and Patrick Mahomes to you wait around, it's never going to happen. And then you'll look up and the Green Bay Packers will win 2 Super Bowls in 4 years. I think the team that has the most pressure on them going into this season is San Francisco. Even understanding the weight of what the Chiefs are trying to accomplish. And make no mistake about it, they're going for it. There is a real expectation that they're going to do something that we have never seen been done before in the NFL. There's real expectation, and with those expectations comes pressure. But ultimately, look back at the end of the season. If Kansas City falls short, right? If they lose in the Super Bowl or they lose in the AFC Championship, can you really say, oh, it was a complete and utter failure? Do you think it will cost anyone their jobs? Do you think that you would legitimately say that the Kansas City Chiefs, their window is closed and they're never going to win it again because they fell one step short, shy of three-peating? I don't think so. The team that meets expectation and urgency is San Francisco. I think they have to do it. And if they don't, just, again, look at Buffalo. Look at the feeling around Buffalo right now. Look at what's being said about Buffalo. Now that it's starting to turn, like some people are going, am I really going to bet on the Jets? Am I really going to put stock in Aaron Rodgers with everything going on with them? Or would I rather just roll with Josh Allen? And I think it's starting to come back a little bit as everyone gets in their predictions. They're like, oh, like the Bills aren't done. But they're not being looked at as a serious Super Bowl contender. That was last year. And after they did not get it done, did not break through, the conversation around them, it's going to happen with San Francisco. Can Kyle Shanahan actually win a Super Bowl? Can you win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy? Can this team be as dangerous if they're going to lose one of their two wide receivers? I don't think anyone in the NFL has more pressure on them than the San Francisco 49ers. But I do think something that helps alleviate that pressure a little bit is getting the Ayuk and the Trent Williams deal done before the season even starts. Because that can add to your, trust me. After week one, Kansas City fans were kind of freaking out. So good on all parties involved, because that you don't need that. You don't need that on top of everything else. Right now on Circus Sports, 49ers plus 550, second to only Kansas City. And I think that's right. We'll get more into NFL predictions and all that kind of stuff in the next couple of days. But yeah, Chiefs 49ers, that tracks. So all of this angst, all the anxiety, all the worry from you 49er fans, the 719ers here in town, it was all for nothing. You worried about nothing. Everybody's locked up, ready to roll for this upcoming season. And what a game. They have one of the more interesting games on the week one slate. That's for sure. 719-247-1313. Take a break. Wrap up this Tuesday edition of Drive Time Sports after this. Breaking weather. It's Marvel Superhero Night with Switchbacks FC this Saturday night at Weiner Field. Come dressed as your favorite character at 6 p.m. for your chance to get a limited edition superhero cape provided by Children's Hospital. And you'll also get to meet your favorite Marvel heroes. And then after the Switchbacks take on Tampa Bay Rowdies, experience a marvelous superhero fireworks show. It all goes down Saturday, September 7th, 6 p.m. at Weiner Field. Get your tickets now at switchbacksfc.com. I didn't sell them. Marvelous. So marvelous. I broke it up and that I botched it. How about them Switchbacks? My goodness, did they put a whooping on Tulsa on Sunday. They got, 4 players and James Chambers made Team of the Week in the USL Championship? Winning 4-1 will do that. Congrats, by the way, to Brian. He won a 4-pack of passes to see Beetlejuice at Icon Cinemas on Sunday. I'll have another opportunity for you to win tomorrow, as well as more chances to win Air Force football tickets tomorrow. So, and then the day after that, the prize is the NFL season beginning, especially with the team that's going to be opening up the new campaign. And of course, I'm talking about the Baltimore Ravens. Not that people are fast forwarding necessarily to week 2, but you could be honest. You're excited for week 1 if you're a Broncos fan. But you're really ready for week 2. Like, that's what you're really excited about. You're excited about the season starting. You're excited about Sunday. You're very excited about week 2. That's what you're looking forward to. Allow me to add a little bit more spice to it. It's actually not me that's doing this. Ben Roethlisberger. You remember him? Shouts to Miami of Ohio. Ben Roethlisberger, Wally Zerbiak. I think of a third famous athlete from Miami of Ohio. Anyway, Ben Roethlisberger, stop me if you've heard this one before, is on a podcast. And on the Footballin' podcast, Ben Roethlisberger said, quote, "Thank you, Denver, for paying." Denver paid Russ like $38 million to go away, which is okay. 9-time Pro Bowler. I don't know his stats. 9-time Pro Bowler, Super Bowl. And we're like, okay, we'll take him. Thank you. I don't know his stats, which is a great admission. Right? Tell me that you should excuse yourself from this conversation without telling me you should excuse yourself from this conversation. I'm not saying I have Russell Wilson's numbers memorized, but you saying that and just going 9-time Pro Bowler. Do you know the last time he was in the Pro Bowl? That wasn't last year. It wasn't the year before. Like, this is the problem. And it's not a big problem, but it's a bit of a problem. It's one thing to drape yourself in black and yellow and try to, stoke the flames before that week 2 game. But Ben Roethlisberger is basically telling you, I have no idea how good Russell Wilson is, but I know the back of his football card. Not even the back of his football card. I know how many Pro Bowls he went to. Yeah, because you went together. Because you were both good at the same time. That's how you know how many Pro Bowls he's been to. You were at the same ones. Do you notice that the number hasn't crept up since you left the league, Ben? This is the problem. This is the problem that I knew was going to be a problem, and I just let it happen anyway. You find this nice sweater, or you think it's nice, because you go into Goodwill and you see it and you're like, that's really nice for Goodwill. I'm going to take that. What? It's only $3. I'll wear it. And then the problem is you think that that's okay to wear to like work or wear to a nice function. And you do that and people notice that it's a Goodwill sweater that you're wearing. Trust me, people notice. Not fooling anybody. It's fine that the Steelers paid Russell Wilson nothing to play for him. It's fine. But you can't get carried away and act like, you know how Steelers should be framing this, how Ben Roethlisberger should be framing this? Russell Wilson is better than Kenny Pickett. That is the nicest thing that you could honestly say without being a complete BS artist about Russell Wilson. He's probably better than Kenny Pickett. How much better? That remains to be seen. That is the most praise that I am comfortable hearing someone heap on Russell Wilson. He's better than Kenny Pickett. Nine-time Pro Bowler. Do you know how many All-Star games Barry Bonds played in? Could you imagine the Colorado Rockies adding a 15-time All-Star to their lineup? Oh, Barry Bonds is like 60 now? Okay, that might be a problem. It's fine that you paid him nothing. You had no other. What other options did you have? But this idea like, thanks, Denver, now we're going to dunk on you. Come on. Come on. Be serious. Talk about how TJ Watt is going to wreck Bo Nix. Like that I could read and be like, you know what? You might be right. Thank you, Denver. Give it about 3 weeks, Ben Roethlisberger, and tell me thank you, Denver. 9-time Pro Bowl, Super Bowl. Shake and bake. It's not relevant. Not relevant how many times. And in fact, it's the problem. The problem is everyone keeps looking at his Pro Bowls. The problem is they bring up when Russell Wilson was in the Super Bowl. I've been working here for what feels like a very long time, and I just got here when Russell Wilson was in the Super Bowl. So please spare me the fact that because he has a Super Bowl appearance on his resume, 2 even, and a Super Bowl win on his resume, that somehow fast forward 8 years later that I'm supposed to be impressed or think that that means that the Steelers fleeced the Denver Broncos. They released him for a reason. I'm not saying the Broncos have to be far better off with Bo Nix than Russell Wilson, but I'm also kind of saying that. But Sean Payton, like, you got to at least give him his just due and say, this dude knows quarterbacks. And if he's willing to incur that penalty to let Russell Wilson go, he knows something. He knows something. He probably knew the thing that Pete Carroll knew when the Seahawks were laughing all the way to the bank. That's thank you, Denver. That's the thank you, Denver. It's Seattle saying thank you, Denver, not Pittsburgh. Seattle was laughing because they knew. And now, 2 iterations of Russell Wilson later, the Pittsburgh Steelers are thinking they're getting a 9-time Pro Bowler and Super Bowl champion. That's not how time works. Just Sanders, I'm just trying to protect. I'm impartial. Like I just want to see Sean Payton throw so much shade at Russell Wilson. And you know what I would love to see? I would love to see Russell Wilson throw shade back. I would love it. Like, just say it once. Call Sean Payton a name. Call him a name where you cuss before it. Like, please, Russell Wilson. That's my biggest hope for week 2. I just want to see these 2 teams get catty AF leading up to that game. I don't care who wins. I really don't. I have a feeling who's going to win. I'm going to have a prediction on who's going to win. I'm just here for the show. I'm going to be locked into weekly press conferences trying to find Russell Wilson throwing some shade. But I'm fine. I'm just telling you. It's not a good idea to get your hopes up about Russell Wilson, and certainly to be. Here's a great example. You know, somebody that I remember just last year got a little bit too high on his own supply and started running his mouth a little bit and acting like he knew better. Yeah, it was Sean Payton talking about Nathaniel Hackett, and then the New York Jets with Zach Wilson came into Denver and beat them. Okay, so it doesn't normally end well. Let's see. Why don't you just see Russell Wilson for more than 2 drives and tell me that that's the 9-time Pro Bowler that you can remember? Can't wait for week 2. I know Broncos Seahawks on Sunday. This week is more about Nebraska CU, and then next week will be about Pittsburgh Denver. Want to before I go, want to inform you that you can now use your body's healing properties, your own body's healing properties. They're your own in your body right now to revitalize your achy joints and get you lasting pain relief. Seriously, it's regenerative medicine and it's at QC Kinetics. If you're tired of arthritic pain in your knees, hips, back, or shoulder, this is something you need to check out. Everybody's talking about this right now. The local medical professionals at QC Kinetics are experts in these amazing treatments. There have been people here. I've talked to them. They are raving about their results. And they got tens of thousands of satisfied patients all across the country. And the consultation is totally free. Right? Get in there. Find out what it's all about. See if it's right for you. I have a feeling it will be. 719-347-1988. Call now. Take action to get lasting joint pain relief with help from QC Kinetics. 719-347-1988. 719-347-1988. It has been my distinct honor and pleasure to serve you. My thanks to Corey Roldan of KKTV 11 for being my guest. Armin Katayan scheduled to join me tomorrow to talk about his new book on the state of college football. Jessica Mendoza will be joining me, also of KKTV 11, to get more into the Broncos as we transition from week 1 in college football to week 1 in the NFL. Oh, this is a joyous time. Talk to you tomorrow.